By the autumn of 1941, Pearl Harbor stood as the most powerful naval installation in the entire Pacific Ocean. Nestled along the southern coast of the island of Oahu in the Hawaiian Islands, this sprawling military complex had grown from a modest coaling station into the beating heart of American naval power in the Pacific. The base sat roughly 2,400 miles west of the continental United States mainland, making it a critical strategic anchor for projecting American military strength deep into the Pacific theater. The harbor itself was a natural wonder of geography, a sheltered lagoon fed by the Pearl River, offering calm, deep waters capable of accommodating the largest warships ever constructed. The United States Navy had recognized this potential decades earlier and had spent years transforming the location into a fortress of steel, concrete, and firepower. By 1941, the installation covered thousands of acres and housed tens of thousands of military personnel from multiple branches of the armed forces. The sheer scale of the operation was staggering, encompassing dry docks, fuel storage facilities, ammunition depots, repair shops, barracks, airfields, and administrative buildings spread across the harbor and surrounding landscape. Pearl Harbor was not simply a naval base. It was a self-contained military city, capable of sustaining prolonged operations across the vast expanse of the Pacific without significant resupply from the mainland. The island's central position made it both a hub of activity and, as events would prove, a point of extreme vulnerability. The centerpiece of the installation was the massive dry dock system, which allowed the Navy to perform extensive repairs and maintenance on its largest vessels without returning them to the continental United States. Dry Dock No. 1, completed in 1919, was one of the most impressive engineering achievements of its era, capable of accommodating battleships of the largest class then in service. Alongside this sat additional dry docks and floating dry docks that gave the base an extraordinary capacity for ship maintenance and repair. The Navy Yard, which occupied a significant portion of the harbor's eastern shore, served as the industrial backbone of the entire installation. Machine shops, foundries, electrical shops, and fabrication facilities operated around the clock, employing thousands of civilian workers alongside military personnel. Fuel storage was another critical component of the base's infrastructure. Enormous above-ground fuel tanks held millions of gallons of oil and aviation fuel, representing a vital strategic reserve for fleet operations across the Pacific. The submarine base, located on the eastern side of the harbor, housed a growing fleet of submarines that were increasingly seen as essential instruments of Pacific warfare. Ford Island, sitting directly in the center of the harbor, served as a combined naval air station and was home to patrol aircraft, observation planes, and various support facilities. This absence of the carriers, which would later emerge as the dominant weapons of Pacific naval warfare, meant that the most strategically valuable assets of the Pacific Fleet escaped the destruction that was about to unfold, a stretch that would become forever known as Battleship Row. These massive warships represented the traditional core of American naval doctrine, which still held the battleship as a supreme instrument of naval power. On the morning of December 7, 1941, 8 battleships were present at Pearl Harbor: the USS Arizona, the USS Oklahoma, the USS West Virginia, the USS California, the USS Nevada, the USS Maryland, the USS Tennessee, and the USS Pennsylvania were all either moored along Ford Island or positioned in the nearby dry dock. These vessels collectively represented an enormous concentration of naval firepower and carried crews numbering in the hundreds for each ship. The Pacific Fleet, commanded by Admiral Husband Kimmel, was the primary military force responsible for American naval operations across the entire Pacific Ocean. Beyond the battleships, the fleet included heavy and light cruisers, dozens of destroyers, submarines, and various auxiliary vessels. Notably absent on that fateful morning were the fleet's aircraft carriers. General Short had ordered his aircraft parked in tight groups as a precaution against sabotage, a decision made in response to warnings about potential enemy activity, but one that would have devastating consequences when aerial attack came instead. The Hawaiian Department, commanded by Lieutenant General Walter Short, was responsible for the ground defense of the islands and the operation of Army Air Force's installations throughout Oahu. The Army's air power was concentrated at several key airfields spread across the island. Hickam Field, located immediately adjacent to Pearl Harbor, was the primary Army Air Force's installation in Hawaii and home to heavy bombers including Boeing B-17 Flying Fortresses, as well as pursuit aircraft and various support planes. Wheeler Field, situated in the central plateau of Oahu near Schofield Barracks, served as the main fighter base for the Hawaiian Department and housed a large number of Curtiss P-40 Warhawk pursuit aircraft. Bellows Field, located on the eastern coast of Oahu, served primarily as a training facility but also maintained operational aircraft. Iwo Marine Corps Air Station, located west of Pearl Harbor, was home to Marine Corps aviation units equipped with fighters and scout bombers. Haliwa Field on the northern shore was a smaller auxiliary airfield. Together, these installations gave the Army and Marine Corps a significant air presence on Oahu, though the aircraft were largely concentrated on the ground in ways that would make them extremely vulnerable to attack. The ground defense of Oahu rested primarily with the United States Army's 25th Infantry Division and the Hawaiian Division, along with various supporting units totaling approximately 43,000 soldiers stationed across the islands. Schofield Barracks, one of the largest Army installations in the world at that time, served as the primary home for Army ground forces on Oahu and could accommodate tens of thousands of troops. The coastal defense network around Oahu consisted of a series of artillery batteries positioned at strategic points around the island's shoreline. These batteries were equipped with large-caliber naval guns capable of engaging enemy surface vessels attempting to approach the island. Fort DeRussy, Fort Ruger, Fort Armstrong, and Fort Kamehameha were among the coastal defense installations ringing the island. Anti-aircraft artillery units were also deployed across Oahu, though their ammunition was largely stored separately from the guns themselves as a peacetime safety precaution, a decision that would significantly hamper their effectiveness when the attack came. The Army also operated a network of mobile radar stations, including the Opana radar station on the northern tip of Oahu, which represented some of the most advanced early warning technology available at the time. On the morning of December 7th, the Opana station actually detected the incoming Japanese aircraft, but the report was dismissed by a duty officer who assumed the contact represented a flight of American B-17 bombers expected from the mainland. Despite the enormous concentration of military power assembled across the Hawaiian Islands, by 1941 the overall state of readiness at Pearl Harbor and its surrounding installations reflected a complex mixture of capability and complacency. The sheer size and strength of the forces present created a psychological sense of security that was difficult to overcome, even as diplomatic tensions with Japan escalated through the final months of 1941. Communication between Washington and the Hawaiian Command had produced a series of war warning messages, but these warnings were interpreted in ways that emphasized the threat of sabotage from within rather than direct military attack from without. The vast distances of the Pacific, combined with the formidable reputation of the American military presence at Pearl Harbor, led many commanders to believe that Japan would not dare strike directly at such a powerful installation. The harbor's geography, while offering excellent shelter for the fleet, also created a concentration of targets that an attacker could exploit with devastating efficiency. The fuel tanks, the dry docks, the moored battleships, and the aircraft parked wingtip to wingtip on the airfields all represented extraordinary concentrations of military value within a relatively compact geographic area. The men and women serving at Pearl Harbor in those final weeks of peace were professionals committed to their duties, operating within a command structure that had not yet fully adapted its thinking to the new realities of modern warfare, where aircraft carriers and long-range aviation had fundamentally transformed the nature of naval combat. The stage was set, the forces were in place, and the most consequential morning in American military history was drawing inexorably closer.